All right, so guys, let's continue. So we actually had something for business information, and that is good. Let's build out a menu and work with that menu. And the next thing I think we should actually do is we can have something for new business account classification, like that. We can have that business account classification, and that is good. We can also have new account or new accounting period, like that. We can let me see if we can expand this more. So we can have new accounting period. We can go ahead and have new account, like that, and basically that is good enough. We can have new journal. Let me see, transaction entry. Let's use the word transaction entry, and we can have that. Those are the new. We can also have exit. There's something traditional in most applications. Let me show you this. You see, we can have lines, horizontal rules that divide screens like this, as you've seen, and you have exit at the bottom. We can actually insert that by coming here and putting a separator like that, and we can actually see business information. We have that separator there, and you see, notice that's a separator there. We have another one here. Let's put another one. Once we come down from the catalog, let's have another one by, let's put a separator, and let's get the separator to here. Yeah, let's keep it there. And we have two now. And we have transaction entry, and let's put another separator in here. And here we can put in, let's put something else. Let's put there's probably an exit, something to exit this form, exit application. Let's use the word exit application, and let's have a good look at that in view. So we can go ahead and check this out. So we can come here and you notice, I think I missed one line. Let's come here. The rule we put here, the rule I didn't enter here, but it did for the transaction entry. We find the exit application. So let's go ahead and make sure that we have that divider. Visual Studio can be a bit funny most times. Let's have a separator, and let's move this separator up to this point, like that. Okay, that is there now. All right, and we can see the horizontal rule is there now. We have that rule there, and that is good enough for us. Let's keep it that simple. Remember, we have accounting periods here, and we can toggle the accounting periods to open a grid. We can actually have like business catalog or account catalog or something, where we have different types of account and new meanings. All right, so let's add another component here. Here we can have account classifications. I think account classifications, let's change this from being business account classifications to just let's mutate that property. You can have this property properties windows here just fixed, and make sure that when you select this, it is selected, but obviously it's not. I just want this to be new account classification instead of business account classification, like that. So I want it to be new account classification. So we can actually shift this here, account classifications before accounting periods, and we can come here and actually do something else, like we can have accounts, we can do that, or account management. Let's use the word account management, or accounting records. Let's use the word accounting records. Yeah, I think so. Like I don't know, let's use that one name. So we can shift that here, and we can also have something like advanced settings. I think so, where we can make some changes to the database, or because most times when you're actually deploying this application, you're actually required to connect to using in a distributed fashion, like connect to a different database. So we can actually say probably let's forget about that. Let's leave that. Let's keep that. It's simple. So we can also come in here and add a something different, like transactions create, or journal, or like general ledger, something like that. All right, so let's have it to we can say let's just put general ledger like that. General ledger, for instance. Think ledger, sorry sorry about that. General ledger, I think so, that is the correct spelling of ledger. So we can have the general ledger here, and we can put it here. So let's start from the very first thing. So we have a new account classification. We can actually achieve two things in here. We can have one form that does for creating new account, creating new account pair. We can actually have that. We can also have ways of encouraging reusability within our system. So let's close this. That is not needed. Let's go and craft a form for business account classification. And let's come in here, and we can actually cleanly craft out the form for that. Let's come to, let's minimize this and come over to, we had business resources, and we come here and we will add another folder, and we'll call this classification resources. Classification resources, like that. Okay, and here we will have a new form, and we can say that this form should be FRM classification, right? So we can say from account classification. Let's use the word account like that, and we can have that form there. As usual, I like to mutate, make changes to the properties of the form. So we'll call this account classification. So the users will see account classification, and that is what they will see. We can make a slight adjustment to this. Let me go check out some of the properties we use in the form business info, and that was the font property. I would like to maintain a consistent font across all my phones. Okay, we said this was 10.75 JetBrains mono. Alright, so I'll go ahead and use that font in here. So we can come here, and I'll come to this and change it from Sergio to JetBrains mono, and we have this regular, and we have 10, and that is the fonts I want to use. Alright, as usual, we have a form. We need to also add a table layout panel, traditionally, as we've been doing with the rest of the application. And we can also have the table layout panel docked in to its parent, like that. And that is what we have. Now, the business account classification has some columns. It has, let's look at what we did for the business. We had two buttons, and we had the labels here, and we had entries here. Okay, so we can replicate the same thing. So here we can come in here and add more columns to this. So let's go ahead and add a few columns. There are a couple of a few rows, like that. That's 2, and we can add one more row. That is 3. And let's expand the rows and see what they are. Alright, so we have them. those are the three rows. First, we can check out, let's come to our Solution Explorer and check out the business account classification data object, which is in here, and it has 1, 2, 3 properties. So we have 3 properties here, and we want to leverage those 3 properties. So we have 1, 2, 3 properties, and that is basically okay for us. So we can minimize this a bit like this, right? And that is not too bad. Actually, the resolution on my system is a bit is massive. This is currently 975 by 667 pixels, and that is huge and small. In a system that has a smaller resolution. So let's, as traditional, we would add a group box in the side of the panel, as we normally do, and we'll set the group box to dock as well. But before we actually do that, let's give this some fixed dimensions to the properties. So in the rows we are using 50-50. I would like us to use a fixed percentage. For instance, first row can be the 4 cells, so we can check 25%. We can change this to 25%. We can change this to, instead of absolute, let's keep it 25% as well. We can make this as 25% as well. So because there are 4 columns, they can actually be okay. So we have 25% for all the columns, and they will all be equal now. All right. So we can come here and actually come to the properties panel, and this is the group box that is selected. Let's make sure that is selected, and that is a group box. We can actually dock the group box, dock it like this, and actually remove the name and let it be there. And we can do what we did before. We add 2 buttons in here, and we can Control-C, Control-V to duplicate the buttons. And we have these 2 buttons, and one, we can actually use the buttons like this. All right, and this is good. We can align them here, and we can put one here. All right, one can be save and one can be cancel. All right, we can have that. Let's use that. So we will come back to the properties, and we'll change this to save. Button 1 should be save, and we can change the button name from button 1 to button save. We can do the same thing for let's do this for, come back to properties and change button 2 to button cancel, and we can say this should be cancel, all right, or close, something like that. So we can do that, and probably definitely we have a whole bunch of, let's close this shell for now. We have a whole bunch of like 1, 2, 3 components we have to design that same form for. And to me, I think it will be always tedious to, all right, we can actually, let's go ahead and do it. Let me not do something. Let's leave it like that, and let's continue to make changes to it. And here we can add the labels as usual. So we can add a label here, and we'll call it level 1. Go ahead, click another level, add here and add here. So here we will have, if you check out the business classification data object, you'll notice that we have classification code, description, and account type. So let's go ahead and add those. So first thing we'll add, I will add description or account type. Let me use the word account type. So first thing, this level, I'll change the text in this level to account type or type of account. Let's use the word type of account, because that is what the users can easily understand, type of account. And here we can actually change this to description or classification name. Let's use the word classification name. and we can actually change this to classification code. So we can say classification code. We can actually do dot in there. We can do dot in here as name. All right, so we are good. So we can do this, and that is actually good for us. But there's something obvious. There's no space here. Like, we can actually expand this a bit, and we can actually expand the form a bit like that, and that is good. As usual, we should dock this properly. So we can dock this to, instead of none, we can dock them to fill the whole space like that. And we can align the text. Text align should be center. Instead of top left, we can put the text align to the center like that, or we can put it to align to that part of the screen, to the left side of the screen. So we can do the same docking for both classification name. So we can put this to align here, and we can make them actually dock at the full like that, and that is better, and that is much better. The next thing we need to do is we need to put in some controls, and the very first control we want to put here is a combo box control traditionally, and I'll put a text box control in the classification name and a text box control in the classification code. So here we can actually name this as CMB account type, CB account type. Let's use the word account type, and here we can put the, let's pin this so we get to use it easily. So we can have text description. Let's use the word description, and here we can use the word text classification code. Yeah, we can do that, and that is good. So another thing we need to do is we would like to dock this. Let's see, docking this like this, does it make sense? It does. And we can also make this I like this to be at the bottom. There is an anchor property top left. Not sure I like that. Let's put this at the bottom. I think that is what I did. Let's change this to the bottom. Bottom. Let's dock that properly. Did we actually dock in the other videos, or we just adjusted this? I think we should dock here. Let's change this to bottom like this, and that is better. I feel that is better. Alright, instead of just doing let me check out what we did for the form business, and I would apply the same thing. Let's come to solution and come to form business and see what I did to those controls. So let's come here. What did I do here? Here I did I docked bottom and I anchor top left. Seriously? Alright, I think that's the same thing that we'll do. So dock bottom. Let's do the dock bottom again here. Dock bottom. And here we can do the dock bottom again. We dock it to the bottom. Like that. Alright. And that is better. But I don't like the way they are aligned. I like them to be aligned properly. So probably I should shift this up a bit. Like that. That is better. Then I can come in here and actually adjust this. No way. Alright, let's forget about that. Let's leave it natural. Let's put the text to be bottom. Let's do that. Text align, middle left. Let's put it at the bottom as well. Like that. That is better. And put this one at the bottom as well. and dot is better. All right, so they are properly aligned at the bottom together. All right, that is better. So we have those details for our application, but there is something I'm actually missing. Assuming there is a requirement, an error flag somewhere, I could insert a message. Let's go ahead and add one row at the bottom so we can actually show a message or display a message. And let's come to edit rows and columns and say rows and columns. Can we actually push this up? I don't know why in the previous versions of .NET it was possible to actually take this control up. So here we can spread this to 20% as well. 20%, because we have another requirements, 20. Let's change all this to 20, where we can actually display some form of messages to inform the users of the application, or probably something, there's a change or something like that. And we can actually take this, we can change this, that group box, we can remove it from where it is and put it at the bottom here. All right, so let's get to, we are there, and it is in column 1. Which row are you? So it's in row 3. Let's check it to row 4. And that should shift that in there. And here we can make a slight adjustment to our form, so we can have move space like that. And here we can actually manually shift this up a bit, and this is better. All right, so that is better. So we have accounting classification. We can actually do a whole of things here, but that is good enough for us, and for learning it's good enough. So we can go ahead and save this and close this. We have no need for this now, and we can go ahead and actually integrate this into our application when it runs. So for us to actually do that, we need to come back here first and add this also as a service. So we can say services dot add transient. You should know what add transient is if you followed, or if you listen to my series or this learning series. If you do not, add transients means that each time we request that object, give us a fresh copy of it. All right, so we had form classification injected into our dependency container, and that is one. So we can come back here, and when you click on new classification, we can actually save you a new instance of that object. So var classification, basically what we need to do is, let's just copy this. I'll change the name here to form, like that, so that I do not get to write this more often. Form and form. And here I'll change it to form classification. Form classification, account classification. All right. And that is what I need. So when you say new business account classification toolkit, we get that. So let's run our application and see what happens when we actually request a new form or a new business account classification. Apologies. So that is getting up and running. So we can come here and say new business account classification. Yeah, we have the form. It's ready. It's good looking. So we're good. And that is fine. But there's something I don't like, this demarcation here. And I would like that to change. All right. So, and you know what we will do next? What we'll do next actually is that we will actually want the form to actually display at a better point, the center of the screen, not on the side of the screen that it was showing. So let's come back here and come to business form classification, and let's make it this group box actually span the whole. All right, let's leave it there. Let's make it span. Let's make this property actually span properly. And here we are actually using one column. I'll put it in column 0. Let's put column 0 and make it to span 2 columns and span 2 columns. All right. And that is it. And we can now shift this to this point and shift this to this point. That looks better. That looks better. Alright. That looks better. Alright. That is one. And the next thing we need to do is we need to make this form. The form itself, I want it to, the start position is, I don't appreciate it. I want it to be center parent. Let's see that. I've forgotten again whether it's center parent or center screen. Let's run that again and have a look at it, if it is center parent or not. So we can come in here and say classification. So I think it's center screen. So let's change that to center screen. So let's change that to center screen. And let's run this again and make sure it's in the center of the screen. So we can do this and we can come in here and it is in the center of the screen. So that is better. We can close this, come in and remove this, and we have that in a good position. Alright, so that is there for accounting classification. And we're going to come up with how to integrate the functionalities to actually create an account classification from this point. Alright, so here in the account classification, our form can have 3 states. So let's drill inside the code behind file. Let's go to the code behind file, and I forgot to actually show you something. Now, each form has 3 components. All right, and let's come to Solution Explorer so I can show you very well. A form has a designer and also a resource file associated with it. The resource file is when you drag the resource file allows you to put other components into the form. Like you can add pictures and every other thing, additional strings into the form. Now, when the designer is automatically generated for you. When you drag a component or a control into the form, it's generated automatically in the designer. Now, there's another thing called code behind file, all right? And the code behind file allows you to do a couple of things. So for instance, if I navigate inside this, I get this partial class, which is part of the real class itself, which allows me to write instructions in this part of the class that tie different events to that particular form. Alright, to that particular form. So that is what happens. So when I double click, I enter the save the click event here, and you can come back to the properties form and you click this thunder-like sign called events. You'll notice that you'll see that on the click event, there's a method here. We can see also on there could be a double click event. Let me check. Not okay on enter or some things. All these events can be fired, and you can write event handling functions for them. So this is what happens when you, that is one thing I wanted to clear, to be cleared on. All right, so let's keep on crafting out this component. So the form, basically, this form, unlike our, is going to share some similarities that are similar to what we had in the business form, and different state. I would like to create an object inside this presentation that can help me with the state's information. So here I can add a new class. Here I'll call it form state, so I can reuse it and throughout my application. So at form state, and this form state is not actually going to be a class, it's going to be an enum. So public enum form state, and here I'm going to declare a view state, and I'm also going to declare view state and insert, or let me use the word create state and edit state. All right, so I want my forms to have these 3 states. Right now, under form classifications, I can come in here and declare actually a form state. Let's use this form state. Form state. And here I can say form state. And what I declare this, and based on the state I want to open this form, I could require that a state always be injected to when you call in the form, all right? Or a form has a default state when it is being called upon. Now here we can do something like we can always initialize this form depending on the event that we want, all right? So the default state of the form, we'll think about how to implement this, but let's have the form state there so we can actually do a lot of things with it. The very first thing we should do is we could have a toggle state. Let me come in here and copy some of the code behind we had for the business. Let's open this and let's come to the toggle UI. We can come in here and say we can, at this point, we can actually remove this component, all right, and change this to and allow this extend the actual form state we have on the form state here, and it still works. And we can actually use this other form state which is here and which is the ones we created here, all right. So that being said, we notice form view, form edit, all right, and I think that doesn't break our code. It still works very beautifully well. Yeah, it still works very beautifully well. So let's continue and let's close this. Now let's come back to the classification. Sorry, there's something I needed to do here was to copy this out and come to form classification and inject it here. So so we could have this state and we have a toggle controls as well. So I'd like to copy toggle controls here and also come into classification and put toggle controls in here. And we have that, and we have button edit. Here the button there is save and the button here is save. All right, I don't think we have to differentiate the button, doesn't matter. Since we have one button that can be doing both things, we can keep them like that. And here the form state is FRM, so let's change this to FRM form state, and we can say this is FRM. All right, so when we initialize the form, wait, let's just see what we will do. And here we can come here and change this to text. Let's just change this to what is applicable. So this is text description. The next one is text classification code. Those are the two input controls, and the final input control in there, let me see, I actually missed something. All right, I did. The final input control in there should be this .cb account type, and we can go in there and change that to be those are controls. All right, those are controls. And here we actually have two states typically for a form in this case, and either is in a date or it is in a create state or in a date state, whatsoever the state it is. All right, so let's just let's leave that to be there for now. And all right, we are good to go. I think we're good. This time we're better. Let's go ahead and inject in the accounts period service. We go in and then inject the business account classification service like that, and we need to inject that service in there. Obviously, we need to do that, and here we can go ahead, or before actually initializing it, we can say service equals to service, and here we can go ahead and generate. Can go ahead and generate a field for that, and that is good. We have service. The next thing I think we will do for that is we need to know obviously when that form is open for something, probably to actually save or capture information and save it. And that is one thing we should have it at the back of our mind. Another thing we could also do is most times we may actually want to let's just keep building this. Let's do it for insert first. So we want to bind the new object and we want to insert it into a database, and that is good. So here we can actually get a private, let's just do private business account classification data object, and we can have that. That is good enough for us. Let's go ahead and minimize this. I did something that is wrong. Oh gosh, I missed that. So let's redo that. Redo. And that is good. We are good. And truth to be told, we may actually need to inject in an instance of a business account classification object, if necessary, depending on which state we are opening the form. All right. So what do we do to do that? We can actually come in here and have some parameters like that injected in, and that will always help. All right. And here we can actually make this to be null, in case most times we don't want this to be mandatory. All right, we can actually set that to be null. And if that is null, it means we should actually instantiate a new object here. Is that the case? Not the case. I don't think that is. All right, let's just leave it like that. So that can actually be null. And here we can actually set this to be null. Most times it can be null and null. And that is enough for me. I appreciate that. Most times it's not needed. Most times an object is created. We'll see what to do with that. And here we can actually do the bind controls. Let's use another approach in this point. Let's bind controls. So we can say bind controls, and we can say void bind controls. All right. And here we are going to do a couple of things. We'll say these.txt description dot data bindings. If there's any bindings, I'm clear, but not necessary, because obviously there is no bindings, because each time this form is called, it's going to be a new instance of the form. So we could say dot add, so we can add bindings to this. And which property are we binding to? We are going to bind to the text property, and where is our data source? Obviously, our data source is going to be our this.business classification object, and that is it. And here we can actually say that here we need this to be which property you're going to bind to. We're going to bind to, or which data member are we binding to? We can bind to the description. I think that is what is being called. We can drill inside to have a look at it. Let's go inside here and grab this object and look at it. Yeah, it's description, and there is null. It can be null. All right. So we can bind to that property, and we can do so for classification code. So we can do text classification code, the data bindings, and here we can actually bind to the classification code. And we can also do for the next component, which is accounts type. So we can do cv accounts type, the data bindings.art. Here we'll select the selected value. That's what we are binding to. And here we'll specify we are actually binding to the accounts type. And that is what we need to do. And another thing we can also do that is necessary is for us to set the data source for accounts types. We actually need account types here. And we can come here and say void bind sources. Let's use the word bind sources. And here we can say this.cb.accounts type dot data source equals to Here we can call accounting constructs. I think that is what we account system constructs. Yeah, that is it. Dot get not this one, dot account types. Yeah, that's the correct one, the account types. And here we can bind to two properties. Yes, like we did before. This dot cb account type dot display member is going to be description, and this dot account type, this dot account cb account type dot value member. Value member is actually when you select something of the list, what component of what property do you want to bind to. That is what the value member actually represents. What data member do you want to bind to? All right, so we want to bind to the value data member, and that is the value member we want to specify. All right, so the data member value would be assigned for each value member we select. All right, so the next thing we can do is to actually, when the form initializes or when the form loads, so here we can come in here and double click on this top space so we can activate the form load event. Here we're going to do bind sources. That is good for me. And here we are going to do bind controls. I think so. That is good enough for me. And that is what we get when we actually have put. This can be null, don't forget that. And how do we make sure that this already, or each time we want to, how do we supply a value to this object? How do we get it injected? Right, that is one thing I want us to specify. Most times we can do this. We can actually get this to be a public property. Let's do this. And instead of injecting this into the constructor, we can actually assign a value to it. And here we do not need to do this. We can actually specify a value for it. All right, and we can use that object itself. All right, and to actually do that, we can, even though we, all right, let's make this private. Sorry, let's make this private. And here we can actually have we can do this. We can make this property like get this and make this private set. All right, so we can actually get that to be private set, and doing that private set means we need to specify a way of actually supplying this form object with what to load with. So we can say public void set classification, set account classification, or let's use the word business account classification. Set business account classification, like that. And here you can pass in a business account classification object, and we can say data object. And here we can go ahead and say this dot business account classification object equals to data object. All right, let's do that. Let's do it that way. And here we need to make sure that this is necessary, that it is always there. It's not nullable. No need, we don't need the private set again. Oh, this has to be public, sorry. Public and private set. And that is good. More nullable business, what's the value? Not necessarily. Let's make sure that this is nullable. So that removes that error. So here we need to set that property, and you need to do that. If we don't do that, we can actually make sure that if you don't set the property, an error gets through. All right, so that is the idea. Most times, do we actually need to do that? it's not necessary. It's not necessary, but we can go ahead and once we want to do the binding, we can actually check if this is not null. So we can say we need we can go ahead and check and say if if business classification object is equals to null. Just go ahead and instantiate a new instance of it, new business data object, like that. If it is null, just instantiate a new instance of it. If it is not null, don't do anything. And that is good enough for us, and that is perfect. We have that there. What we need to do now is we need to understand the state of the object. It's a new object or is an object that already exists. And based on that, we can actually perform some operations on the object itself. So, but the way we crafted the service layer doesn't need us to do that. So we can actually go ahead and check and say var result equals to service dot, not this one, sorry, service dot save business account classification, and we can pass in whatever is the business account classification object that we are working with. And here, if there is no error, at this point we are definitely sure that this is not null, that it has a value. And we can go ahead and say if result is not equal to GUI is equal to not equal to, correct, not equal to GUID dot empty, we can probably come up with some form of notification, like we can call the message box and pass in the value entry successful. Entry successful. Let's do that, and we can just pass in to. Let me see. Message box here is it new? Does it require a new keyword? I'm not sure. If it's not equal, so and message box. Cannot be used like a method. 1 second. Oh, sorry. So this can be we can say show entry successful, and we can just that message. It's enough. Message box dot show entry successful. If not so, if it is empty, you can go ahead and show something else. All right. We could say, let's put this at the bottom here. Here, if it is equal to, you just say message box dot show entry not successful. For instance, we can do something as simple as that, entry not successful. Entry not successful, and that is what we need to do, and we're good. All right. So that is the basic things we need to do, and let's go ahead and check this out. So here we can run this now and have a look at it, a careful look at it, and just have an idea what we've done so far. So we have this, and we have new account classification. Obviously there is an error. Value cannot be null. All right, there is a problem, and I like that. It means that the business data object is actually null, and this cannot be null because the ID is I understand, because the business data object here actually has these null descriptions associated with it. All right, and that is one thing we don't need to bind to, because we can get such errors from there. Another way we can, I'm thinking of a better way we can actually do this. All right, so if that is no, let's do this because we need this to be a bit clean at this point in time. So if this is no, we can actually instantiate new values to it. We can go ahead and say business data object dot description equals to string.empty. Let's do string, an empty string. I wanted to do string.empty. That is what I want, string.empty. Yeah, that is it. And we can duplicate this and pass in empty strings for classification name and classification code, like that. And let's try that again. We can initialize them to temporary empty values. Oh, sorry. I did a mistake. This is not necessary. This is not necessary. Sorry. This is not necessary. Let's actually, if this is equal to null, not this, that was an error. And let's go ahead and remove this and let me see this. If it's not equal to, let's do this like this. That is better. And let's run it again. That should actually be good now. And that should have a value. If it's equal to null, that should show. All right, that is good. And we can come in here and we notice that we have all the accounts set in here, and that is better for us. We can go ahead and play with it, but for now I will not. Let's leave it and I will come back here. So we can close this, and also we need to implement something that is very obvious, that for the cancel button here, we did not actually let the designer re-render the form again. For the cancel button, we did not actually write an implementation for it, and we actually need to do that. We need to write an implementation for the cancel button. This is not loading. We can go ahead and close and open it again. Okay, so here we did not write anything for the cancel button, so we can do this dot close. We can just call close, and that is good. We're good here, and we finish. That is one, but there's something else I would like. I would like to pin this shell here because we are working on it every time. I would like to implement exit application so that also does properly. So we can say this dot close, all right, and we can actually close that application, release the resources, and that is one. The next thing is that we are working with classifications. I would like to implement some form of a classifications grid. Like when you click on classifications, all the classifications should come out, so we can have a good feel of what our system is actually. So let's come back to Solution Explorer and pin this, and here we'll add another form called Windows form called form account classifications, like that. All right, so account classifications, and we have that. Now just the naming convention should give us an idea. All right, and here we'll come to the properties, and I'll do the same thing. I'll change this to JetBrains Mono, and 10. You can use any fonts you like, and I'm going to change this to be start position should be center screen. That is another thing. I will adjust it a bit like this. That is good enough for me. I could actually, all right, that is good enough for me. And I'm thinking, that is good. All right, so let's leave that at that point. Then there's another thing. I'd like to change the form name to be it should be account classifications. All right. That is what I wanted to. That's the name I wanted to be, account classification. And here I want to put our table layer panel as usual, and I would have it docked. And here we will dock it. Beautiful. And I would like to have let me add a row here. We can have a row here. We can have a row here, and let's drop this here and put this here. All right, because I'm gonna use a whole bunch of controls here. The idea that we need two, I'm not really sure we need two spaces. No, I think we have one column is enough for us. That is my own perception. I think one column is good enough. Sincerely, I think so. And I think one column is actually good. We don't need two columns here. One is good enough. So let's remove last column, and that is good enough for us. And we can get this to be here. All right. Now that's the size of a form, and it's still a very big form. We can reduce this and get this down here a bit. All right. Here we can have a group box again. Let's put one group box there. Actually just putting it, and let's dock the group box. We can have it dock to fill the parent, and I don't need anything here. So probably I could say list of count classifications, like that. All right. And we could have it there. Better. We can chop this. We can add another group box here, and we can give it account classifications details. Account classification detail, like that. And here we can have this to also dock beautifully, like that, and that is good. Another thing I would want to make use is I want to make use of a binding source, which I did not before, so you can actually find out the advantage of doing that. So I'm going to double click this, and this is going to give me a binding source, and I'll click on it and give it a name. I'll call it BS account or BS classifications. I'll call it BS classifications, and I'll add a data grid view in here. And probably this is the first time you're using this. I will dock it. I will not enable adding here. I'll disable adding. I'll disable editing. I'll disable deleting, because I want you to see how we can use that. And choose data source, none. I'm not going to do any data source. I want to do everything programmatically. All right, and that is what we have there. Then I will also add a different component, which is I'm going to add a, let me check, components, a binding navigator. I think that is what we used to call it then. Binding navigator. Don't know whether that doesn't exist again. 1 second. It's been long I used this. Let me check this and see something. All right. Obviously, there is no binding navigator here. Okay. So actually, I cannot find the binding navigator here. I don't know why. Let's do this. Let's go to the code behind file, not this one, sorry. Let's delete that art. Let's go to the code behind file. Let's do something. Let's come inside here and instantiate a new binding navigator. So for instance, let's add here let's do binding navigator. Obviously should be here, navigator, and here we can actually say navigator equals to new binding navigator. And that is true. Okay, let's put true. And so we have the standard components. Let's see whether we have that in the form now. We haven't found it because it's already there. The library is there. Navigator. Obviously, this is not showing. Let's do it. Let's build this and see. Let me build this. We build this. Alright, that is done. And I don't know why this is not getting access to the binding navigator. But the code and the library is there. But it's not just showing in Visual Studio 2022. Let me do this. This is row 3. I will inject it here programmatically, but before I do that, let's make this let's come here and say navigator.column. Let's leave that. Let's leave that for the moment. Excuse me. Let's come back to our shell and let's have the classifications here. When you click this, what actually happens? And so here we can actually instantiate a new form like this, and here we need form accounts classifications. This means we have to inject this form into here. So we need to add this here, account classifications. And here we can go ahead and we have this, we have this in the shell and this one is ready. And that is good. Let's go ahead and run this and see, because I do not understand why. Probably it's an unknown issue. It's an unknown issue that this is not actually showing up. Right, this is loading, but we do not get the binding navigator here. All right, let me just I'll build this again and see why. That is not showing. Something just struck me down, or just an idea just hit me down, and I thought we would do this. All right, so let me come here and let me get rid of this. I don't think I actually need that again. So, and I can remove the last row. Remove last row and let my form be just that. All right, let's just be this, only this. And I'm still shocked that I do not have a binding navigator here. This is let me see, reset toolbox. Let's just do that again and see, because I don't understand. Let me reinitialize the toolbox. And because not this is not all the controls that are supposed to be there. Binding navigator is an integral part of the Windows Forms control. Let's just reset that toolbox and see what we get. Alright, so unfortunately there is I don't know what happened with the .NET team. The binding navigator is not actually included in this toolbox when we need it. So I like traditional thing we do, we just like go Google it, find out on Stack Overflow. There is always some implementation or a hack around it, and I found one. And I want to apply that inside this project. So we can go ahead and do that, and we can have an idea about how to get binding navigation into our forms. And if you haven't seen binding navigation before, I can actually show you one. Let me show you. Let's come to a typical case. If you have a resource, let's just go ahead and add a resource here. Add a resource or item. Let me just go add new item, and here I will select a resource. Yeah, that is one. So I'll say custom resources. Let's just add one in our project, and you can have a good idea what a binding navigator. Obviously it is not here as well, so here we only have a data grid. I was thinking it will be here somewhere, but all right, let's practically have a good look at what a binding navigator is, so we can know how to use it in our own projects. So a binding navigator is let's apply that. The hack what I found was that we could, let's drill into this form, and here inside this form we can actually create a different class, like public app binding let me not use app, let me use grid navigator. Okay, content navigator. All right, so you can say content navigator, and here we are going to extend the binding navigator that actually is inside .NET, and that's what we need. And a public class, sorry, so this is actually public class. We can do that. And here all we need to do is create a constructor, and inside the constructor we can call add standard items to the navigator. And this will add every other components that comes with the navigator. And once we do this, we can go ahead and close this and actually rebuild. Look at the side of the window, there is nothing, there is no binding navigator here. That is supposed to come in under data components or the data components of this toolbox, but it is not there at the moment. So once I build this application, like rebuild it, just check out what happens. That should pop up on the side of the screen, and we can have that. Alright, you see now we have a content navigator here on the side of the screen, and we can come in here. We called it content navigator, that is what it is, and we have that content navigator here. So we can actually drag this into this bottom part of our list, and we have it here. And we can go ahead and give it a name, as we can call it BN. Traditionally I call mine BN classifications, like that. Alright, and that is good enough for me. So we can go to the code behind file now, and I can say that this .bn classifications, and you see I can have access to it. Alright, but before then there's something else I want to do. Alright, let's go ahead and assign dot component to it, attach it, associate it with a data source. So we can come here and actually associate these to a BS classification. data source, which we added, which is here. So we can set that BN to this BN class, this BS classifications to the BN classifications. So we actually bind it to a data source. So here I can now come inside. When my form loads, I can associate my let me not do when my form loads. After initializing components, I can actually initialize a source for my data binding source. So what I need to do is traditionally we will have already have a binding source, and what we need to do is I need to have access to the business account classifications service like that, and we need to inject this into as a parameter inside our application, and that is what we need to do first. And I like doing this before actually initializing components. The next thing we'll do is inside this, after the components are initialized, I like to perform a round trip let's do this. Let's have a method that does void bind sources. Let me do that, and inside this method I'll here like this dot BS classifications, that's the binding source, classifications dot data source, where are you going to get your data from? Go ahead and get your data from account classification service dot get account classifications. That is what I want. So when you get that data or in query, that is where you get your data from, and that is one way. The next thing I will do is I would like to associate, we already did that, associate the binding navigator to this binding source, and we need to call this binding sources. So to do that, we need to call binding sources inside. After initializing our component, we can go ahead and bind sources. All right, just go bind sources here, and that is good for us. All right, and that's my opinion. That's good for us. We can go ahead and bind sources there. That is one, and let's go check that out and see how that looks like. All right, now before we proceed, all right, so we can go here and we can notice that we have two items, and the binding navigator actually works in this case. And this is good. This is what we have, but we can see them because we haven't bind to the data grid view to it as well, to the binding source. So let's come back here, and inside here you notice that we have a data grid view. Let's close this and open again. Let's reopen that, classifications, and this is a data grid view. Let's come back to properties here and change this from data grid view 1 to DGV classifications. All right, and that's where I want it. That's how I want to name it, DGV classifications. And we can go to the code behind file again this time, and we can also say that we can programmatically come down here and say that this .dgv classifications binding source doesn't have data source. Let's use the word data source equals to this .bs classifications. All right, and that's all we need to do, and we can come in here and have a good look at it as well and run that and see what happens. So when we open our classifications, we can actually have this in here. We can actually see what's inside the database, that it's displayed for us on the screen. But we're having all this data, this information that is not necessary, the account type 1, and all these other informations, we don't actually need them. We can make it better. All right, so but this is a good starting point, but let's see how we can now work with the data grid view control. All right, and let's see what we can do to make it perfect and come out clean. We can actually rearrange. I thought I didn't. All right, I didn't know that, but let's go ahead and see if you click the art new, it'll allow you it would attempt to process to add to that data source. But however, that is not what I want. So let's close this and make it a bit professional looking. We can proceed from there. So we have that ready, and we will come to format this now. Sorry about this. We will come to format this at this point. That's the next thing I think we should do. We should format this to be better. Alright, so we've got that in place. So let's come to our let's pin this here. We're going to use this more, and let's come to our business account classification data object and have a look at it. So we have ID and account type as the initial thing, as the first set of properties that we marked. So let's make some adjustments, and let me run this again so we can have a good look at it and we can know what to do with it. Alright, so we have let's have this. So now we have ID. We don't need to show our users this ID. Alright, so we don't need that. What we can do here is we can come to not here, we can come to form classifications, and we can actually hide that field. So we can say this .dgv classifications.columns. Alright, columns, and that is the first column, which is .visual equals false. We don't want that to show, and obviously that will not show. The next one, don't worry about. Once we close and start, we'll see that implemented. The account type column, we don't want this to show as well. I don't want this to show. I probably would prefer let's do something, and that is one of the most beautiful things about building applications using the native framework like a Windows form application, because it also helps you to tweak your code and put attach some clean functionalities to your application. Makes it very nice to use. Alright, so the next thing I would like to do is no user will understand what account type 1 means, and they will actually want a more definitive description to what an account type is. So what we'll need to do is, I would say that this should also be visible false. But what I will do is I'll make an adjustment to this classification, business account classification data object, and I will actually add a property here called something like public string account public string account type description. Account type description, like that. Sorry. Let's do this. Public string account type description. And definitely we have the get and set methods. Alright. And here we can actually annotate it. Oh, sorry, not annotate it. We can actually flag it as a nullable property, or we can assign a default value to it. That is not the case. We can actually assign a default value to it, and that is pretty good as well. And during this, we can come to our service here and give a cleaner implementation. This is where we actually, when we're actually getting the business accounts classification, we don't have a definite details to it, or we do have. So here we can actually say account type description. Just see this. This series is the Windows Form series is part of the .NET Associates series, which shows how we built all these components from scratch and tested them, performed integration testing. We did a RESTful endpoint a web service for it. If you want to learn about this, you can head over to learning. There's a link to our learning resource where you can have this, and for a token you can learn. All right, how we built this. So we use enum.getName. So let's do it like this. Let's do enum.getName. The getName here takes in. There's one that takes in just the type, enum type, and the object value. So we can pass in here. Actually, the type is type of. We pass in the type of accounting method, account type, sorry, and the value is here we can pass in domain dot account type, and that is the value, and we can go ahead and say no, and that is one way to actually get that return type. Or you can this will actually return the name, or we can use the generic version of account type in here, type of enum, and all we need to pass in is that we can tell it to pass in the domain type. All right, that just get the name of that for us, and that is what we need to do, and we are good to go. Okay, so this should have the description, and we can have access to it because we know that that is normal. And here inside we can retrieve that now. So inside our business service, we can actually copy this line of instruction and put it also here, so that the rest of our services can have access to that same interpretation, and we are good to go. Yeah, we are good to go now. All right, so we are good to go now, and we can come back to our classification, and we now know that the next thing that will happen is that we have the next property we have is the second column, the third column, and here we can set the header property, header text, to be something more different, more representable. So account type, so you can say account type or type of account. Let's use the word type of account. That makes more sense. So this is the column here. This was 0, and we have a different column that will actually tell us which type of account this is. And we have the type of account specified here, and we can also play with the text property, like we can say text or display text. Let me say display text. I'm coming. So here we can come in and say that we have the auto size mode for the content. We can format the. So here we can say there should be the grid view auto size. Yeah, this is a property dot display cells. Alright, that is what I want. And we can duplicate this for the rest of the 3 columns we need, which is this is going to be 3, column 3, this is going to be column 4, column 4, and here column 3 is classification code. And here we can say classification code, and here we can say that this is classification description. Alright, so that being done, I feel good about it. Bind sources, here should be this is not binding sources, this is formatting sources. So we can come up here and actually do a quick refactoring, extract a method, and call it format grid, or yeah, let's use format list grid. Let's use the word format grid. This is actually should be F1 format grid. That's good enough, and we're good. And we don't need to call that in here. We need to call this inside of the binding sources. We can format grid. All right, that is better, and we have that there. So we can go ahead and close this now. So we can go ahead and run it again and see whether there's the changes we've actually undertaken are represented the way we want them to be. So let's observe this. We'll come back to classifications again, and voila, we have them properly represented. So you have type of account, you have classification code, you have classification description, and that is what I needed to see. So we now see that this is an asset, and this is a classification code, and this is a classification description. We can actually expand this, it will fill in the container, and that looks pretty okay. And we can actually minimize it again and close it. All right, so that is a typical way. Another thing we can do is we can notice that the binding navigator actually is working well. If we have 1,000 records here, we can go through 1,000 records in this place. Before now, I don't know why this binding navigator isn't working properly. We had a way of injecting other tool strips or tool buttons here that can perform additional function. But currently I want the add new here. I don't want it to do this. I don't want it to provide a column for us to inject information. No, because that is not there. And when you click add new, it should bring out a new form for us to create an entry. And that is the next thing we are going to be implementing. Alright, so let's go ahead and do additional settings in this property. So here I've actually selected this turn on, the delete item turn on, and I'll do the same thing for the add item. Where are you? Delete item, add new item. I don't want any. I don't want it to show. Let's go back and see that those actually are not showing. Alright, those are actually disabled. They are not working because I don't need them. What I'll do is I'll add a context menu. Alright, I'll add a context menu that can perform operations on each of these objects as we need them. Alright, so let's come back here and add a more tools. Let's come to menus and add a context menu to this form. Alright, and we can just only double click it. It will be available for use, and it is called CM context menu strip 1. We'll change the name to CMS classifications, so you have an idea what a context menu is actually in an application. So our CMS classifications, and that is the name of the control. It's changed here, and here we will add two primary controls. So for instance, we need to add new, or we can say new something. Let's just skip the word new, and then we can go ahead and come inside here, and let's do this. After adding new, just select, let's select this and add a separator, then add a date current, like a date selected, like that. Let's work with those two context menus. Alright, now the context menu, I don't want it to be associated to the form. I want it to be associated to the data grid itself, to this data grid itself. So here I would come to properties and select DGV, select properties, and on the here our context menu, I will select CMS classifications. All right, that's one. Then we can come back to CMS classifications and write the code behind file that will get called when we actually hit this. Here we need a way of actually having access to the resource and telling it we want to add a new file, right? And you should notice now that there may be duplications of how we access functionalities, and because we can have that in the shell and we also have that here. So I'm going to centralize all our requests because that is better to do. That is the best thing to do. So here I will come here and create a class that is central to processing requests, like when we want to open a form or something. All right. So providing form opening events or form loading events. Let me use the word like that. So here I'll create a simple class, and this class should it be? I'm thinking because let's have a look at form shell. The form shell is already stored in here. Let's go inside here. You notice that form shell have access to program to get required service, and we do this, and we actually show that this is the MDI parent, and we show, all right. But the context menu allows us to do. Should we actually do this? Okay, let's still keep it at that level. Let's still utilize the program as it is. So here, since program is universally available, we can come inside classifications here, and we can say, let's just copy that instruction. Sorry, let's just go ahead and copy this and come to in here and put it here. And this time, let's minimize this so we can see what we actually don't need form classification. We need just the form classification. And here, this doesn't need an MDI parent. This can be, it doesn't need a parent, and I don't need to configure this. But here I want, when this form is loading, I want it to show dialog. Show dialog means do not allow anything until I am closed. All right. And you will get to see the difference between show dialog and the show. All right. So when we call form.show dialog, and we'll actually get that. And that is when we actually want to edit an item or add an item. So new menu item, click. How about when we want to edit a selected item? All right. So we can double click on this, and we also need to call this form again in here and put it here, and this time we will make a mutation to that property. Here we'll say form dot, we actually need to set the business account classification. Remember, when we created this method, we need to pass the actual classification that we want to modify. For right, we'll just say bs classifications, that's the binding source dot current. Let me see, is it selected? I think it's current. All right, dot current. And that should give us the current, gets the current item in the list, probably. Get the selected currency. No, it's the current item in the list that we actually want. Get the current item in the list. But this is actually an object. Remember that you can see that this is actually an object. We need to cast this object back to a business accounts classification, so because that is what is there. So we need to say, this is actually a business account classification object, and let's close this so you can have an idea about it. And that is what I want. So once you do, put it back in the dialog, and that will bind to a form. In case you forgot that, let me show you. We forgot that when we created the classification, not classifications, this form, we actually had a property. So we can go to the code behind file that did this. So once we pass in this object, it will associated with this object, and once that is done, once we call the show method, the show dialog method, this form will actually load, And while this form is loading, we'll bind sources and we'll bind controls. Whatever we put in here will actually get to be bound. Not here, sorry. Will actually get to be bound to the controls in that particular form. So let's go ahead and have a look at what is happening. I'm very sure we implemented the save. Yeah, we did. We did implement save, and this is just the implementation. So let's go ahead and see what our form actually looks like now. So let this be loading now. We'll soon have it. All right, we've gotten it. So we can come here and we have this form now. If you right click, you will notice we have this context menu. If you click here, you won't have the context menu. So here we can have new selected. So if you select new, you'll notice we have this pop-up now, and we can actually select it and create a different account, equity, and we can send, let's just use a liabilities. We can say furniture, not liabilities, we can say office expenses. Let's use that, office expenses. And classification code, we can say L, some form of code like that, and we can save. All right, so that actually has been saved in the database successfully. That's why we have entry successful, and we can click OK. And once that is done, this form should close, but it's not closing until we cancel it. All right, and that should show here. That is what should be the sequence of events that actually happen. But let me show you something. So if I close this and launch it again, you'll notice we have office expenses actually created for us in the database, and that is why we're loading it here. But in a practical application, in a real world scenario, the user would expect that should close and the form should automatically refresh itself, all right? And he should see what he has posted. He doesn't need to, or the user doesn't need to close and open again for that to load. That is what is very typical. So what we will need to do is we need to do some refactoring as well. Okay? And let's come back. That it means our save operation is actually good. So we can come back to the form classification, which is here. All right. We can come back here, and once this is successful, we can just say this dot close. All right, and this dot close. That is better. Once that is closed, we need some way of actually requerying the database or requerying our data sources, so that we have the updated information in there. And we just need to perform a query back to the database and get the value back. We can come back to the design here and actually implement something like refresh. Refresh. All right, and do that. And in refresh, we can actually double click on it and we say, can we do this? Let's do this and see whether that works. All right. And there's something else I saw. I just think, let me select it again and check the properties. And here I want the context menu itself. Sorry, properties of CMS, not the events. I want the properties. I want the fonts to be the same like the parent container. So here I want JetBrains mono, and I want it 10 as usual, and that's what I want. All right. So let's run this again, and we'll make a change. We'll add the form, and let's see what actually triggers the appropriate response for us. So we can come here and we have 552. All our changes are done properly in the database. And assuming there's an error, if the application doesn't implement error processing, our applications will trigger an error instantly. So let's come to, we have asset, we have current assets, and Let's go create fixed assets. Let's just say new fixed assets. Under assets, we can just say fixed assets. And we can give a code like FA blah 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 like that, and that is good. And that goes in successfully, but that doesn't show up here. Let's refresh and see. So actually that doesn't bind properly. We need to go require the database again to actually have the new data. All right, that is what we need to do. And what should I do about this? So we have let's go check fixed assets. We have it here. We need to query this again. There's something I also noticed that I would like to make a change to, but before we do that, so I don't want to forget that. Let me go ahead and do it now. Is that in our business service, I don't want the idea that our accounts name are actually lowercase. I don't want them in lower cases. I want whatever the user puts into the system, it should actually be in uppercase. So we'll come to map to business, and I'll send changes to uppercase, to upper. And I just need to call these methods. How you show that this is not null? Before it's handed over, it's definitely not null. So definitely not null to upper. And that is what I want. Alright, definitely not null. That's one thing. That's where I want that to be made, implemented. When we're creating that I want that to be implemented there. The next thing I want is let's come to our classifications. Again, we're not doing this. Naturally, I would say bind sources again, but that is a bit expensive. Do you know something? That would be a bit expensive, but let me do. Probably I'm getting this wrong. Probably I'm getting the refresh function wrong, because not this one. Sorry, the area classifications. Probably this should be. Let me try. Let me do this. True. Really not sure about this. It's been a long time I worked in this environment. Let me see whether the refresh actually does what we need to do properly. When we create that and we see reset bindings, or oh, I know what it is. It won't work. It won't work. That won't require. That will not require. I'm very sure about it. Let's just go ahead and add a new account type, and this time it be a operating revenue. We can have that as sales, and go ahead and set that in the database. Come back, refresh. That doesn't load because we need to require the data source and actually get that true value. Alright, so we need to go ahead and do that. Alright, so the ideal thing is I think we should return this back to false. That doesn't need to be changed because the metadata is not changing. I think we should actually call bind sources. Alright, we should bind sources again. When we call that, that will force this line of instruction to re-execute and get the changes from the database back. But ideally, I think that is kind of an expensive operation. But assuming someone else is actually, if this is a distributed system and another person is actually making changes also as well, we may actually need to see those changes reflected on our own. Alright, so bind sources, and we can reset bindings and just probably their new entries. Alright, probably not needed. Bind sources, I think we should reset bindings. Let's actually go ahead and check what happens when we do that now. So we're running that now, and we can go ahead and have a look at it and see what happens. So we have these classifications here, we have them here. Actually I would like this fixed asset to be capitalized, so the edit selected, and I want this to be, let me just make a minor change here and save, and that is done successfully. and this is done updated properly, but this isn't. So let's refresh, and you see that that is actually changed. It's gone to the database and gotten the changes properly reflected here. And we will improve on this. I will improve on this, and so I can show you a whole lot of things more. So this is a typical way we can actually implement our application, and we can get to see how this works. And let's move on and do something else. I'll show you much more things you can do with this. For now, the basic things we can do: we can create an account classification, we can edit an account classification, and this has actually also improved our business account classification service. And let's go ahead and do something else. All right, so we should go ahead and implement we've done for insert, edit, and we should do for delete as well. So here I would add a separator. I'll drag the separator from here to here. All right, I prefer it to be like that. Then we will add a edit, and we can add delete under. Let's add delete selected, and that is good. We can move this to, just bring this down like that. All right, so we have delete selected, so we can go ahead and double click on that to go to have access to the code behind file. And we can here we can just do the basic thing. We've got the selected item. That's what we did for the delete set business account classification. Like, this is what we did for the delete. We got the currently selected object. So in this case, we'll do the same thing. We don't need to, probably we can come up with a different thing. Like, for instance, we can say if, let's do that, message box dot show dialog dot show equals to, instead of calling this, we pass in a string like, are you sure, confirm deletion. Let me just write confirm delete. All right, confirm delete. Let's do that, confirm delete, and we can tie this to a dialog result. Just say, let's give a title delete confirmation as a title, delete confirmation. Then we can go ahead and write a message box button. For instance, let's put a dialog result, a button, or just I think it's okay button, message box dot okay, and cancel. That is what I'm thinking we should do. And if this equals to dialog result, not this, sorry about that, let's redo that again. Undo, that's Control Z. Let's just do dialog result dot okay. Yeah, we can do it. Then we can go ahead and actually perform the delete. I think we did a mistake. This is dialog result dot okay. Yeah, we can go ahead and perform the delete. So we can go ahead and do it's called business account classification. What is it? What's the name of that service? One second. We need show dialog. Yeah, account classification service. Yeah, that's the name. Go ahead and call account classification service dot remove, or is it dot delete business account classification? In here we need to pass in the ID, and we can sorry about that. We need to pass in the business account classification data object and pass in the instance. Let's bring this down like this, so we can pass in the instance of bs classifications.current, the currently selected item. And since we need to cast this, we need to cast this to this, we need to have access just to the ID property. .id, and that is what we want. And we can close that, and that is basically what we need to do. So we can go ahead and do this, and this will actually delete it. And we can even wrap another message like var result, and equals to this, and we can say message box again, message box dot show delete successful. All right, we can go ahead and do that, and that should happen if result. So we can say if result, because that returns a boolean, and we can show this. So if the result is true, that you've truly deleted this, you can go ahead and post that this is successful. So let's go ahead and run this to be sure that our delete actually works as well. So this is loading, and we can come in here and let's delete, like the non-operating loss. Let's delete that and confirm delete. I click OK, delete successful, and that is beautiful. That means it is successful. All right, the delete operation is successful. But there's something else I'm missing. We should be able to actually, if I refresh this, that is off, but that should be automatic. That action doesn't need the user to actually refresh. We should be able to do that ourselves. So let's go and see how we can implement that. Here is going to be a little bit simple, and if that is a result, if result, we can go ahead and just we can go ahead and wrap this if result. Then we can go ahead and do something like bind sources, and that should be able to take away that out of the way. I think that is good enough. Bind sources, and that should be able. Actually, we do not even need to call reset bindings in this format code. That's not necessary. That is not necessary. So let's go ahead and try and see that if that delete is true, just go ahead and query the database and get that for us, and get what is inside the database for us. So we can go ahead and come back here, and we would like to delete another thing, and probably let's delete something that has to do with orders contribution. That is the rule we want to delete. Just delete, confirm delete, and the delete is successful. Once we do that and that gets out, that is the kind of responsiveness I want to get. All right, so that is successful. Something just struck me. How about we do the same thing for? How about we can do the same thing for edit and update? I'll leave that up to you. Go and think about it, see how you can implement that, and we can do it. We can actually do that like we did for this, and that can automatically refresh itself. But it's learning. I want you to get your hands dirty and practically learn this. Alright, so we've done for the account classifications, we've done update, delete, remove, and account classification. Let's build for a different component.